Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Extremely excited to be covering Giannis Antetokounmpo in today's video, and we are looking at some potential trades because there has been a lot of noise around the Milwaukee Bucks superstar. Do I think that noise is legitimate? Do I think it is all fabricated? I'll get to that in this video as well. And we'll also look at some real frameworks for deals. Remember, those are frameworks, not the exact entire deal, but frameworks. In the video preview, we're going to talk about 7 trades that I could see the Bucks truly considering in the 2025 offseason. If one thing is for certain, if Giannis Antetokounmpo becomes available, there are a plethora of teams who will be heavily targeting the soon-to-be 30-year-old superstar forward. Giannis turns 30 years old in December, which is just crazy. Where has the time gone? It felt like just yesterday he was making his debut in the league. And now he's 30 years old, which is just absurd. But as I said in the open, all of this stems off of some of the rumors we have recently heard regarding trades around Giannis Antetokounmpo. What are those rumors? Well, the first one was a rumor he essentially started himself, where he stated, yeah, if we don't win a championship, I might get traded. This is the world we live in. That is a direct quote from Giannis Antetokounmpo via Sam Amick. Legion Hoops here is the aggregator of the news. And this is something that he stated. He put this out himself. So first of all, I don't really like buying into a whole bunch of speculation about, oh, well, will this guy get traded? Will he not? But when you have the actual player himself, especially a superstar player like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who can control his future, well, that matters a lot when he is saying something like this. Secondly, now weeks after his initial quote, we have more rumors covering Giannis Antetokounmpo. There's a rising sense of confidence that if things go poorly in Milwaukee, that Giannis could be available for trade and would really force his way out of Milwaukee within the next year. And if you guys go back to my thoughts on the Damian Lillard trade, I pointed this out as a potential outcome, how when a superstar runs the organization, when he's the one who is in decision, in points of decision, making decisions on the coach, giving his influence on what players to acquire, when he has real sway on the coaching, on the teammates he plays with, typically those decisions tend to end poorly because a player is not a GM. A player is not a lead executive. A player doesn't always know what's best to put around them, and they don't have a lot of long-term concern about draft picks, about the organization itself, because what the player wants is to maximize their championship window in the present moment, and at times that puts teams in a real bind long-term. If you look at Milwaukee and the draft picks that they owe out the door, the lack of flexibility they have because of the cap aprons, they are in serious trouble, and with that comes some trade restrictions as well. I was working through each team's assets. Okay, I was looking when I'm preparing for this video. I'm putting in a lot of time looking at, hey, what do teams have to trade, both in terms of young players, draft picks, salary. I'm looking at the cap tables, and then Milwaukee's cap situation on top of all of this really complicates things for teams who could potentially want Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Milwaukee Bucks presently are a second apron team, and they're very likely going to be a second apron team again next year unless they do one of the 3 following things. They could salary dump Chris Middleton to a team with cap space, say someone like the Brooklyn Nets, for example, where they'd have to give up an asset or 2 to even get off of his contract. That would get them out of the second apron. Or they could salary dump both Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton to a team or teams with space. Now, that's the easier route for Milwaukee. It would cost them probably less draft capital, less assets to move to get off of Portis and Connaughton, or they could just simply renounce rights on Brook Lopez. The problem with all 3 of these outcomes, you're getting rid of some of your better players on the roster. Chris Middleton is still a starting caliber player. Brook Lopez has been the defensive anchor for the Milwaukee Bucks for some time. Then Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, both key pieces as well in their rotation. Connaughton obviously is a floor stretcher, and Portis has kind of their 6-man scoring option over the last year or so, especially has played really well in that role. So I think looking at it from an objective point of view, getting rid of these players intentionally just makes Milwaukee worse, which is part of why Giannis's future here in Milwaukee is kind of questionable long term. Now, the one advantage Milwaukee does have, Giannis Antetokounmpo signed an extension, so even though he might say, hey, I want to force my way to this destination, to this city, he doesn't really have control over that. We saw how that played out with Damian Lillard himself. He wanted to go to Miami, ultimately could not get that done. But since the Bucks are a second apron team, a Giannis trade means that Milwaukee cannot aggregate players. So Giannis is going to be the only player that can go out in the deals that you see in this video. And it also means that they cannot take in more salary than they are sending out. Now, listen, the trades aren't going to happen until the 2025 offseason. Milwaukee's not trading Giannis Antetokounmpo this season. So keep that in mind first and foremost. Secondly, in the trades, you're going to see some of them today say that Milwaukee is taking in more salary. Remember, Giannis's contract grows by about $3 million going into next season, whereas some of the other contracts in return actually are flat or even descending in some cases. So keep that in mind. I'll try and remind you as we get to those trades in the video. The first trade I want to talk about, remember we have 7 of them, is with the Charlotte Hornets. And I really dug deep in this. I covered all 30 NBA teams. I looked through every single cap table. I thought about, okay, what's the direction of this organization? What's the trajectory of some of their young players? What draft picks do they have? What can Milwaukee really want? And remember, with a plethora of teams having real interest in landing a 30-year-old superstar, we're talking heavy draft compensation. We're talking a lot of good young players as well in some of these deals. And they're going to get increasingly better as the video goes on. So Charlotte, in my opinion, probably has the least attractive offer here out of the 7 trades for Milwaukee. But I still think it's an offer that would be worth considering. It features 5 players and 5 first-round draft choices for Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I think for Charlotte, a team with new ownership, new direction, looking to place someone around LaMelo Ball, Giannis Antetokounmpo is the perfect player on paper to put next to someone like LaMelo Ball, to put next to someone like Brandon Miller. You're getting a player with real downhill gravity, real downhill force, able to function as a secondary rim protector. I think something that would be essential there in Charlotte. We all know how great Giannis Antetokounmpo is, and what he would bring to Charlotte would be immense. He's a perfect fit for a very young Hornets team, a team that's looking to finally make the postseason with LaMelo Ball, and I think Giannis in Charlotte would be able to elevate them definitely to that level. And as LaMelo starts to hit his peak at some point in the next couple of years, Brandon Miller starts to ascend toward his prime, Charlotte could be a really dangerous team with the right infrastructure around Giannis. And for Milwaukee here, what do you get? You get Grant Williams, a player who could potentially get redealt somewhere else, but also could just function as a long-term rotation player for you as you try and navigate the post-Giannis, post-Damian Lillard era of Milwaukee Bucks basketball. Because assuming Giannis gets traded, it's very likely that Dame would probably ask out as well. Josh Green, another younger player. Josh Green, only 23 years old. Could see him definitely fitting into Milwaukee's long-term future as kind of this athletic wing with a little bit more playmaking juice than he's ever been given credit for. Vasa Micic in here for salary. Nick Richards in here for salary. Nick Smith Jr., another smaller guard who's capable of getting his shot off. Not really sure he has a long-term future, especially in Milwaukee, but he's a young player and also in here for salary cap reasons a little bit. And the Bucks also get quite a bit of cap relief here, nearly $8 million of cap relief, and 5 first-round picks, and a lot of them are far out into the future. So you're getting a 2026 first-round pick via Charlotte. Probably not going to be the most attractive pick if you are trading Giannis there. But then you get 2 2027 firsts, one from Miami, one from Dallas. You're getting a 2028 first from Charlotte, and then that 2030 first from Charlotte might be really the crown jewel of this trade, because getting a pick 5-6 years into the future when you're trading a 30-year-old superstar probably means that 5-6 years from now, this team's first of all not going to look very similar. Who knows how the CBA is going to alter things as well when it comes to team building and how teams really overturn throughout the course of 5 or 6 years. That 2030 first-round pick might be the cream of the crop of the deal here. Again, this is not the strongest offer I think Milwaukee will get. For Charlotte, I just could not see them including LaMelo Ball or Brandon Miller or even Mark Williams. If you're including any of those 3 players, I just don't know how serious your upside is if you're Charlotte. Like, you just can't go into a season starting Nick Richards with Giannis Antetokounmpo and hope to win. So there's a reason I excluded those players. Now, Milwaukee would obviously love to get any of those three, maybe even two of the three if they really wanted to push for it, but I just couldn't see Charlotte being willing to do that given their current context. Let's jump into trade number 2, and it is with the Orlando Magic, a team that has a lot of great trajectory right now. They are moving tremendously well. Paolo Banchero continues to take steps forward in his development. He is looking like a true superstar player. I think his handle's on another level this year. The shot making has been on another level so far as well. And Orlando obviously has this great infrastructure of team defense and a lot of hard-nosed guys who want to get on the basketball. They'll dive on the floor for loose balls. They make a whole bunch of winning plays. Jalen Suggs continues to blossom as a two-way player, one of the best on-ball guard defenders in the entire NBA, but also his three-point shot continues to impress, and I think that's been one of the biggest developmental areas of growth for him from when he came out of Gonzaga to where he is at presently. So Milwaukee, when they're looking to deal with Orlando, this deal really centers around some of the non-immediate core for Orlando, and again, a vast collection of draft picks. 5 first-round picks and 4 players in this deal. And I think the caliber of players received here from Milwaukee is a step above what they were getting back from Charlotte. You're getting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a player who has contributed to championship basketball not once but twice in his NBA career so far, back with the bubble Lakers and then also the 2023 Denver Nuggets. So KCP is a player that if Milwaukee did want to reroute, he would have real value around the league. I'm very certain of that, especially as the cap continues to grow. KCP's contract is very, very fair. Wendell Carter Jr. in this deal, probably one of the better young pieces Milwaukee could expect to get back in this type of package as well. Just looking at getting a player who's able to stretch the floor a bit as a big man, could maybe bridge the gap post Brook Lopez there in Milwaukee. Anthony Black, I think, is the best long-term piece Milwaukee acquires here. A real point guard with significant playmaking feel and real defensive tenacity as well. I was extremely high on Anthony Black coming out of Arkansas. I had him firmly in my top 10 in that draft class, and I think he is starting to really showcase this year exactly what he's capable of doing on an NBA court. This would be a really great get for Milwaukee, and you also get Jet Howard, who Orlando would not want to include in this deal, but given the draft selection of Tristan da Silva, if push came to shove, I think Orlando would be willing to include Jet Howard as well, even though his shooting is very valuable for the Magic half-court offense, in my opinion. If it came down to getting on Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think Orlando would push the right buttons to do so. And Jet Howard, again, I think him and Anthony Black alongside each other in Milwaukee could be pretty good long-term, especially with Wendell Carter Jr.'s floor spacing as well as KCP's if Milwaukee decided to keep KCP. And again, you're getting 5 first-round picks, that 2025 first via Denver, 2025 first via Milwaukee, or via Orlando, excuse me. A swap option between Phoenix or Washington. Washington's likely won't convey, so likely you're looking at a swap option with Phoenix in 2026, and then also 2027 unprotected first, a 2029 unprotected first. Again, in all of these deals, you're going to see that collection of further out future picks, and for Milwaukee specifically, that's where some of the long-term value really lies. Once you trade Giannis Antetokounmpo, obviously your team is shifting direction significantly. You're no longer looking to contend in the Eastern Conference, but instead you're looking to almost tear down, get young players, and get added flexibility over the course of nearly a decade, at least half a decade when you're getting out picks in 2027, 2029, and you're really just changing the course, the way that you're sailing. And when you have Damian Lillard also to trade, it's possible you could go out into the marketplace, get a couple more future first-round picks, and really reshape the direction of this team without completely bottoming out and still betting against the futures of some other teams that you're trading with. Trade number 3, and this one here centers with the Memphis Grizzlies, with Giannis Antetokounmpo landing in Memphis. This is one of the more interesting packages, and Memphis isn't a team that I think we have typically talked about as a real destination for a giant significant trade. You know, we've talked about the Mikal Bridges possibility in the past. The New York Knicks kind of went above and beyond and outbid anyone for Mikal Bridges, which now leaves Memphis in a spot where they're sitting there with their draft picks. They're sitting there waiting to see if they should strike on somebody. And I think this type of package is the exact deal that could push Memphis from being a real problem in the Western Conference to a legitimate, ferocious beast that almost no team could physically match up with. Now, it does cost quite a bit. Again, 5 first-round picks. You're getting a pick here from 2025, 2027, 2029, 2031, and one of those swaps via Phoenix or Washington in 2030. The Suns obviously have been splitting up their assets numerous times, so that's why you're going to see some of these picks throughout this video in that sense. And then also, you're getting Marcus Smart, another player who I think teams around the league would value. That could be a reroute option where you send Marcus Smart to a third team. Brandon Clark, for example, I think would be a really nice energy big man for Milwaukee if they decide to keep him. John Konchar's in here for salary purposes. And then Zach Edey, probably the centerpiece of the trade here for Milwaukee in terms of player compensation. Standing at 7'4", obviously there's a wide range of people who believe Zach Edey was the best player in the 2024 NBA draft class. I myself did not fit into that category, but I do think he is an NBA caliber big man who can deter players around the rim, and obviously has his own capabilities as a rim finisher with tremendous hands. He's a good player. I think Zach Edey will be a good NBA player for a while. My comparison for him for quite a while has been a little bit of a bigger, a little bit slower Ivica Zubac, and I think that's going to be a good player in the NBA. So for Milwaukee, getting Zach Edey I think is a nice piece in this deal. Memphis turns into a real serious threat to win a championship or multiple potentially. And they're able to do this while keeping Jaren Jackson Jr. With the idea that Jaren Jackson Jr. and Giannis Antetokounmpo as your 4-5 pairing, even though neither of them are really a true center, you have enough length, size, athleticism, rebounding, rim protection to get away with it, and that you can just be such an offensive force on one end and a real mismatch nightmare on that end that some of your defensive deficiencies that may rear its ugly head at times with Giannis and Jaren sharing the 4-5 position. Those things maybe just don't outweigh how good your offense could really be around Ja Morant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., really building an elite core four there. Now, obviously, this does put a lot of strain on Memphis from a financial standpoint as well. With the new CBA, they'd be very hamstrung into the current roster that they have, especially with trading out all of their first-round picks. So there is a little bit of risk here for Memphis, no denying that, but it is a significant upgrade. There's also no denying that aspect either. Trade number 4. This one comes with the San Antonio Spurs, and very similar to how we talked about Charlotte, a team that direction, everything is pointing upward for the Charlotte Hornets seemingly with the young talent that they have on the roster and some of their pieces. The same is true here for San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama, Stephon Castle, a serious collection of future draft picks from multiple different teams. San Antonio is poised to be a real threat, and they're willing to give up 6 first-round picks in this deal for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Imagine Giannis and Victor Wembanyama in one front court together. I think everything that Wembanyama is presently lacking in terms of physical play strength, some of the shot diet that I have pointed out even prior to the draft that would be a little problematic early in his career in terms of where his shot selection is coming from. I think, getting a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is such a downhill force, another really great rebounder, again, athleticism, shot blocking, everything that you want in an individual power forward, essentially, Giannis Antetokounmpo provides at an elite level. So next to Wembanyama, I think the two of them together would be such a dynamic force on both offense and defense. I think the high-low action between Giannis and Wembanyama could be really, really dangerous. I think that the defensive end, it gives the Spurs a little bit more flexibility. You can play Wembanyama out on the perimeter more because Giannis could be your weak side low-man tag defender in a lot of cases. It gives San Antonio so much flexibility if they were able to pull something like this off. And they do have the draft pick collection to actually do something like this too. You do give up some young players. Keldon Johnson, someone who's capable of scoring the basketball. Harrison Barnes is in here for salary purposes. Jeremy Sohan, I think Milwaukee would really like to get him. He's got playmaking feel as a 4. Obviously the point guard experiment San Antonio tried to make work, aka tanked to do. With Sohan playing point guard last year did not work very much, but I think Sohan really grew and developed from that experience as a player, and I think now slotting back into a true power forward has felt a little bit more comfortable in his normal, natural role. Malachi Branham, I don't think he's a great NBA player. I don't think he's going to stick around in the league for a long time, but he's in here. He's someone who would be perceived with upside, I'm sure. And then the 6 first-round picks. Again, this is just a significant collection of assets for a 30-year-old superstar. 2025 first via Atlanta, probably going to be a pretty solid pick. 2026 swap rights with Atlanta, pretty good thing to have. 2026 first via San Antonio, it's a first-round pick added to the collection. 2027 unprotected first from Atlanta. Those Hawks picks all go to Milwaukee here. You also get a 2028 first via Boston and a 2030 first via Dallas. And now I know some people are going to say, whoa, why are the Spurs giving up that many draft picks? First of all, they're not giving up that elite young player. They're not giving up an extremely dynamic young player. Yes, you're giving up Sohan and Keldon Johnson, but I think the upgrade to Giannis Antetokounmpo is most definitely worth it. And then when it comes to those first-round picks, remember, San Antonio has rights to a whole bunch of stuff. They have swap rights in 2031 with Dallas. They own future Timberwolves picks as well. They own a bunch of other draft picks as well along the way. So even though you're giving up those Atlanta picks, you're giving up a Boston pick and a Dallas pick, the Spurs still really hold most of their own future intact. They maintain a lot of their trade flexibility going forward, and it would allow San Antonio to go back out into the marketplace again, try and make more trades, and really build a team around Victor Wembanyama, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Devin Vassell. They also have, again, like I said, Stephon Castle and Trey Jones they could retain too. So San Antonio could be a really, really good team pretty quickly if they made a trade like this, just because I think Giannis is such a perfect pairing next to Victor Wembanyama in the front court. Trade number 5. This is one that I wasn't really sure if I wanted to include in this video. This team has the assets. They have the wherewithal to make a trade like this happen, first and foremost. So I am including Utah here, and the biggest reason is because of Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge is all about superstar players, and when there's a superstar available, he is going to want to go get them. In this trade, Utah gives up 7 picks. 7 first-round picks. And the reason for that is they are not going to part with any of their super exciting, super intriguing young players. They're not going to give up some of their former top 10 picks, okay? Cody Williams is not going to be in this deal. They're not going to be willing to part with Taylor Hendricks, who just had a devastating leg injury. Prayers up for Taylor Hendricks. Really, really hope he recovers well. I was super optimistic on him in his own draft class. I want him to come back healthy, and I want him to be an awesome NBA player. I still think he'll be capable of it, even after such a devastating injury. Utah's going to keep a lot of their young pieces. They're going to send out John Collins, who is salary. Now, remember, this is one of those deals where it says Milwaukee's taking back more money. That's not actually true because John Collins is on a flat contract, $26.5 million each season. Colin Sexton's contract only goes up about $500,000. Walker Kessler's goes up about $2 million. And Giannis's escalates by about $3 million. So actually the Bucks will be saving just a little bit of money on this as well. Just keep that in mind. Isaiah Collier in this here as well, another former first-round pick. The Bucks get 4 players and 7 first-round picks. Kessler obviously being one of the most important pieces in this deal for Milwaukee to acquire as a potential long-term starting big man for them who could be really solid in drop coverage, protect the rim for them, and be a rim finisher. Colin Sexton, I think, one of the more underrated players in the entire NBA. Utah would happily give him up, though, to acquire Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's just the reality of the league. Collier, I didn't like much in his own draft, but I think maybe there's a future for him, and I think Milwaukee could be a team that affords an opportunity to him for sure. Collins, he's athletic, he's salary. I'm not going to be too worried about talking about him in this. But the 7 first-round picks, and this is where the deals of Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, allow Utah to reshuffle their deck and finally go get that mega 1A type superstar in Giannis Antetokounmpo. They give up 2 2025 picks, one via Minnesota, one via Cleveland. They give up a 2026 swap option between Minnesota, Cleveland, or Utah. They give up 2027 first via Los Angeles. That pick is top 4 protected. They're giving up a Cleveland 2027 pick. They're giving up a Timberwolves 2027 first and a Timberwolves 2029 first. Now, the reason why Utah is willing to do this, first of all, they keep Lauri Markkanen, they keep all their young pieces, they keep all their long-term core together for the most part outside of Sexton and Kessler. They're able to keep their core nucleus of guys around Giannis Antetokounmpo with the belief that with more draft pick assets, they could go out, just like I talked about with San Antonio, go back out into the marketplace and continue to upgrade the roster in multiple areas. And with the picks that Utah still has, remember, in this deal, they're keeping most of their own future intact. They're also able to continue building their team with some of those other picks that they had gotten from Minnesota. There's another asset that they have from Minnesota not listed in this trade. They have 2 more assets from Cleveland not listed in this trade. So with that in mind, Utah has more flexibility to still improve their roster with their own picks, with an extra Timberwolves pick and 2 extra Cavs picks. Utah still runs the table in terms of making more trades in the future, and getting an upgrade at the power forward spot like Giannis Antetokounmpo is just remarkable. Giannis and Lauri Markkanen could be such a dynamic pairing as well, just like we talked about with Victor and Giannis. I think obviously the Lauri Markkanen area is a little bit more ready right now. We've seen Lauri Markkanen as a true all-star player, a guy who is tremendous off the catch. Last year, over 80% of his baskets were assisted. And typically when you talk about star players, that's not what you typically associate with stars. Is usually they're creating their own shots. But that's what makes Lauri Markkanen such a perfect fit with many different kinds of players. And I think specifically if he's playing with Giannis Antetokounmpo, the downhill force that Giannis would play with would really alleviate a lot of Lauri Markkanen in the half court and really open up opportunities for him to operate as a catch-and-shoot guy, catch and drive, attack closeouts. Giannis Antetokounmpo is a special player in that regard, that he would fit very, very well with someone who's great playing off the catch, and Lauri Markkanen is exactly that there in Utah. Trade number 6, and now here it is for my Rockets fans. You guys have been waiting for it. I think Houston is one of those teams right now that is just laying in wait, waiting for the right player to become available. I have previously talked about Devin Booker being that player. I still think that's very, very likely. But with the Giannis Antetokounmpo news, maybe, just maybe, Houston's the landing spot for Giannis. They have the salary, they have the young players, and they have some really valuable draft picks to send out in a deal to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. Here are 4 players, 5 first-round picks, and some real valuable picks at that I think Milwaukee could look at as immediately attractive compared to some of those other assets that you've seen in some of these other trades. First of all, let's start with the players. Dillon Brooks, another player, yes, you could easily reroute him to another team. Someone would want Dillon Brooks, especially at that cap number. I know people freaked out about it a couple of summers ago. I said in the moment, this contract's not bad. It's going to be pretty good. He's going to help Houston a lot, and he has done that so far. Now it's about Houston looking to upgrade over Dillon Brooks. They're able to do that if they get Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they use Brooks' salary to help get the deal done. Jabari Smith Jr., former top 3 pick. Obviously, the beginning of his career has been, I would say, a little disappointing. There was a lot of optimism around Jabari Smith Jr., even at one point being considered the likely number 1 overall pick over Paolo Banchero, over Chet Holmgren. Now, that did not happen, and his career just hasn't panned out in a way that I think a lot of people were hopeful for. For me, I'm not like completely shocked by it. He's always been more of an off-the-catch type of player. Now, I still really liked him for his two-way upside, and I think that's one of the things I've been more disappointed in. I haven't just felt him as this elite defensive player at any point in time yet, and I'm hoping that we still get to see that. He's still extremely young, so I'm not saying it's over for him either. Milwaukee, this is a upside grab here on Jabari, that he can blossom into this two-way forward that shoots the ball at a very high clip and also just defends very, very well, naturally probably 2 through 4 most frequently. Jock Landale's in here for salary. He's got a non-guaranteed deal. Milwaukee could get out of this money pretty easily, which would be good for them, freeing up some more space. And then Tari Eason. Missed most of last year with some injury stuff, unfortunately. But when Tari Eason's on the court, he's one of the more dynamic players because Houston uses him to defend the basketball quite a bit. He's really capable of defending guards. He's got that natural great length, size. At Cincinnati, we saw a lot of that turn into production, both on the glass and in the scoring department. In the NBA, he's not going to be this 20-point-per-game scorer, but he's got the physical tools to be really assertive at times, and he's going to be a great transition player for a long time in the NBA, and I think also a real advantage attacker. So for Milwaukee, you're getting players who could be real frameworks for the next iteration of Bucks basketball with Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari Eason. And again, you're getting that collection of draft picks that have real equity. The 2025 first, probably not going to be the most valuable asset as we currently see it, but the 2027 first via Phoenix could be very, very valuable depending on what happens over there in the desert. Swap rights with Brooklyn in 2027 projects to be a really, really great pick to own, one that Houston's not going to part with easily, and would likely only include in a deal for someone like a Giannis Antetokounmpo or like a Devin Booker, a 2028 first-round pick via Houston, and then also a 2029 first via either Dallas and or Phoenix. There's a couple of small, minute details on that pick that could really shape who ends up owning which pick in that, but again, it's an upside thing here for Milwaukee. 5 first-round picks could be really, really valuable for them. 2 really good young players in Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari Eason. The Rockets push their chips in, become a contender with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and really, really would be a good team for quite a while, in my opinion. Trade number 7, the final trade to talk about in this video, and you guys knew Oklahoma City would be featured here. The Thunder have been waiting for a moment like this. Now, the biggest question for me is, and I almost didn't include OKC because of this, would OKC even be willing to do something like this, given, first of all, how good they presently already are, and then secondly, the ramifications of getting another huge, ginormous salary on their books in a relatively smaller market there in OKC? Well, I think those things would be possible limitations for Oklahoma City. If you have the opportunity to land Giannis Antetokounmpo, you should seriously really look at taking that opportunity and taking advantage of it. And I think Sam Presti's too smart not to, if an opportunity arose for him to do so. Isaiah Hartenstein, who unfortunately has missed the beginning of the year with an injury, he's already in trade talks here for me, and it's just because he's got a huge salary. And this is where his huge salary becomes very useful for Oklahoma City if they ever look to upgrade to a premier superstar player. Very clearly, Milwaukee would want Jalen Williams. Milwaukee would really want Chet Holmgren. Oklahoma City's going to laugh at any of those kind of requests because they're going to say, okay, we're just not going to do that. We're going to keep our core, and we're probably going to win championships anyway. So if Milwaukee and OKC were to work out a deal, OKC's not going to give up any of their 3 young star players. Okay, that's just the reality. I know Bucks fans are going to say, we're giving up arguably the best player in our franchise's history. And I would say, yeah, but he's also 30 years old. And instead of getting the young, proven players from Oklahoma City, you're going to get a collection of good upside young players and a ton of draft picks. Again, 5 players here, 6 first-round picks. This is the best package imaginable for Milwaukee, in my opinion. You get Cason Wallace, a player who was a former lottery pick, number 10 overall in 2023. He's flat out very, very good at basketball. Cason Wallace is going to be a really good player for a while. He would start on a bunch of teams. The fact that he's on Oklahoma City is the only reason he's not starting, probably somewhere right now. Ousmane Dieng, still an upside player. This year he's gotten a little bit more run, a little bit more opportunity, and I think has looked good in those opportunities. Nikola Topic out this season with an ACL injury. A player, again, lottery pick level player. A lot of people were thinking Nikola Topic might have been the first, second, or third pick in 2024 prior to this injury. Fell a little bit in the draft. Oklahoma City scooped him up. He's a player with real ball handling, passing capabilities. Now, he still needs to grow as a jump shooter from the perimeter, but I think the framework is here for Nikola Topic to become a tremendous offensive player in the NBA, someone who can be a very dynamic on-ball player. And then A.J. Mitchell, I included in this deal as well, I think would be a tremendous get for Milwaukee. A.J. Mitchell's played a little bit already in the NBA this year as a rookie for OKC. They drafted him in the second round. I could not believe he was a second-round pick. He's way better than a second-round pick should be, and I think would be a good long-term get for Milwaukee as well. And then also 6 first-round picks, and some of these are extremely valuable. You're getting the 2025 first potentially via either Houston or the Clippers. Could be a very valuable asset. You're getting the Thunder's 2025 first-round pick. You're getting the Thunder 2027 first-round pick. You're getting Dallas's 2028 first-round pick. You're getting the Thunder's first in 2029 and 2031. Remember, these are frameworks, so maybe more second-rounders could be included. OKC has so many draft picks that they could part with a whole bunch of them and almost not even feel the damage done by making a trade like this. Giannis Antetokounmpo in OKC, just like I talked about with Victor Wembanyama, how Giannis would be a really great natural pairing with him. All of that is true for Chet Holmgren as well. If you go back to my 2022 draft content on the channel. I was extremely optimistic on Chet Holmgren. I think he's becoming everything I expected him to be. You know, I said pre-draft he's not going to be this 25, 27 point per game superstar, but he's going to be this 18 to 20 point per game winner who just impacts the game so much on both ends of the floor. I think that's exactly what we've seen so far, and Giannis would really, really work well in Oklahoma City. I think their spacing, the pace that they play with, the ball movement that they play with, and just getting, I think one thing that Giannis would bring to OKC especially is another really great playmaker. And while I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander continues to grow in that area, I think Giannis would be probably the best passer on day one of his tenure there in OKC. So that could be very, very valuable for the Thunder, especially come playoff time, getting someone who will get them to the free throw line consistently. I think Giannis and Shai together is terrifying. And the great thing about the way that Oklahoma City plays, you know, Mark Daigneault's creative enough to not ask Giannis Antetokounmpo to screen 15, 20 times a game. And I think a lot of people were betting that the Dame-Giannis pairing would work so well because of the screening. Giannis doesn't want to screen 20, 25 times a game. That's just the reality. So I think putting him in a situation where you can play a little bit more 5-out, you can attack in transition, those are things Giannis naturally tends to lean toward anyway. And I think Oklahoma City with Giannis, Chet, J-Dub, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Alex Caruso, like, oh my goodness. To be honest, they're too good. The league should veto this if this were to happen, by the way. Even though I think the Milwaukee Bucks, this is the best package they could potentially get, in my opinion, even with a free open market. A lot of teams right now just can't get involved for Giannis. Miami's going to struggle too because of salary cap reasons. If they want to trade Rozier and Tyler Hero, that's too much money going out the door for Giannis, so that's already a problem. And for Philadelphia, Paul George's contract actually is higher than Giannis Antetokounmpo's presently, so that will also be a problem if Philadelphia wanted to get involved for a Giannis trade. So keep those things in mind. Some teams aren't going to have the access to go get Giannis, but I want to know below in the comment section, will Giannis get traded? If so, which team will acquire him? And then what's the trade package? I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.